deputies. All right, keep your eyes peeled. You let me know if you see anything going on the streets, will you?
Will do.
All right, there you are, partner.
I do ask that you please stay on the outside of the gazebo for the main part of this, just because I am going to be a little bit later on loading one of these guns with a blank round and firing it off. And just to again let you guys know, everything is going to be very safe. We're all very well trained in what we do. We just want to make sure that we're safe with everybody about those guns. I'm going to start off with talking about the pistols. Now, the first pistols that you saw in history back in the 1600s, the 1700s, even going up into the 1800s, were single-shot muzzle-loading pistols. Now, what those single-shot muzzle-loading pistols meant is everything had to be loaded down the barrel. You had to pour your powder down the barrel. That's all right, it was almost empty. There's bugs flying that cup all day long. It's a good thing to pour it out every once in a while. But you had to pour everything down the barrel, and once you got your gun loaded, you had one shot before you had to reload. And that really just didn't work if you were getting into a fight with someone. You wanted a little bit more firepower. So they started coming up with ideas for pistols that could carry more than one shot. Early editions of those revolving pistols will look something like this guy here. Now this is just a replica modeled after an 1840 pepper box. Basically what this is it's a black powder pistol that you had to load everything down the barrel, and when you pull the trigger, that entire cylinder rotates around. So basically you have 6 cylinders and 6 barrels that are all rotating around at the same time to fire off those shots. Now, this was a great innovation in firearms, but it had a little bit of design flaws, and it wasn't the most comfortable thing to shoot, carry, and they weren't the most reliable. So again, they wanted something just a little bit better. So they went back to the drawing board and they came out with the Colt Dragoon. Now, believe it or not, this was a couple pounds lighter than that Walker. So you can just imagine how big that pistol was. This weighed in at just over 3 pounds. But this is what I'm talking about with that single barrel with the revolving cylinder. Now, this is what is called a cap and ball revolver. What that means is to load this gun, you have to bring this hammer halfway back so the cylinder will rotate around. You have to pour your powder down each one of these barrels, or each one of these cylinders. Then you had to take this rod and you had to pack it down each cylinder. Then you had to go through, after all that was done, you had to put a percussion cap on the back. Now, if you don't know what a percussion cap is, it's basically the same thing as a primer on a modern bullet. It's what sets off the gunpowder inside the gun. Now with is what, in my opinion, the most beautiful and best gun ever made. The 1851 Navy Colt. Now this is a beautiful pistol, a lot lighter than that Colt Dragoon was, but it was also a little bit smaller with the ammunition that it fired out. This fired a 36 caliber lead ball, so just a little bit smaller on there, but this was a massive improvement on that Dragoon as far as easier to clean. It was better accuracy. This was just a better gun. Now, for any of you who are new here to Deadwood, I'm sure you guys heard about Wild Bill Hickok. Now, Wild Bill Hickok, when he was here in Deadwood, carried a pair of 1851 Navy Colts. His were nickel-plated with white ivory handles. Beautiful, beautiful pistols. Now, I talk about improved accuracy. You would probably imagine a gun in 1851 that shot black powder with a lead ball instead of a bullet. Probably not the most accurate, right? You'd actually be surprised. This gun is out of my personal collection, and I can hit targets at 150 yards with this very comfortably. These guns are actually very, very accurate. Wild Bill was said to have gotten into a disagreement with a fella in Springfield, Missouri. They went through and they were arguing over a pocket watch, and that fella took a shot at Wild Bill. And it was 75 yards across that town square. Wild Bill lined up, took a shot, bang, one shot, straight through the heart at 75 yards. If you know what you're doing, these are very accurate pistols. Now, a couple little design features that I like about this guy is you'll notice this bead here at the front of the barrel. That is your front sight, but you will notice there is no rear sight on the back of that cylinder. Your rear sight appears when you bring your hammer back. It's actually that built-in feature that lines up with that front sight so you can go through and that you can fire off your shots. Now again, this was a massive improvement, but then the military said, you know, we want that 44 caliber back. We want that little bit more firepower, but they like this design. So in 1860, they came out with the 1860 Army. went back to that 44 caliber, but you can see design-wise it was very similar to the 51 Navy. Another gun developer we had was Star Arms. Now this is the oldest gun that I'm going to show you today. This is an original gun from 1863. This pistol is over 100 years old. Talk about being in good condition for a 100-year-old pistol, right? It is all original, aside from a couple of the nipples on the back we had to replace because they were a little bit damaged. Now, what's interesting about this pistol compared to what I've showed you before is this is a double action pistol. For any of you who doesn't know what that means, everything I've showed you before is single action. What that means is if you pull the trigger, nothing happens. Single action, you have to manually bring back the hammer and then pull the trigger for it to fire. But with the Star Arms, it does it all for you at the same time there. Now, I don't want to drop that hammer down too hard, but you can see how that all comes back in just that one fluid motion. Now this is a very interesting pistol, and it was actually one of the favorite pistols of the Confederacy during the Civil War. It looked like this guy right here. Kind of an interesting design to it, but a big old heavy pistol. Why was this the favorite of the Confederacy? This pistol fired 9 shots of 44, all rotating around a 20 gauge shotgun. You can see that right there in the middle. You can load that up with a 20 gauge shotgun in there. That's all 10 shots that you have to fire off when you have on your side. If you were in the heat of battle and you had this at your side, yeah, that was quite the upper hand that you would have. And this was actually a popular collector's piece among officers and infantrymen in the Union Army. There is no live ammunition anywhere near this, and I will be showing you what all we're doing. But I do again, please ask for both your safety and for ours that you stay on the outside of the gazebo while we are loading up this gun. I'll tell you a little bit more about the reasons for that is, but we are going to be using real black powder. Now we're not going to be firing anything out that at a long distance could hurt somebody. But at any distance, from me to you, how we're going to load this gun could not only injure you, it could be lethal at this distance. But again, I want to assure you are all very well trained in what we're doing with these, but please again, do just ask that you stay on the outside. I'm going to be explaining everything that we're loading this up with as we're doing it, but one thing I want you guys to keep in mind is while we're loading this up, remember if you carried this kind of pistol, you had to have all of your gear with you to reload. So what does that mean? That means that you have to have your black powder with you. You have to have whatever you're going to be shooting out of it, so usually your lead ball. Now again, we're not going to be using a lead ball. What we use instead is cream of wheat cereal. Just like what you might have had for breakfast this morning. Now the reason we use that cream of wheat, and after everyone can see that there, go ahead and just toss that cream of wheat up in the air after everyone's got a good view of it. Y'all see how that just spreads out nice and easy like that, doesn't stay together in one clump. Makes it a little bit safer to shoot that out. Now that is actually the same way that they loaded guns in the old black and white Hollywood movies. Those black and white cowboy movies, this is called the Hollywood load, and that's what they would use. Now this is just a powder flask. We have it cut off so that that top little barrel there measures out those 10 grains for us, so we don't have to do a powder measure every time we do it. Now this is normally where you go through and you put in your lead ball, but like I said, we use cream of wheat cereal. Now since the cream of wheat is just a little bit less consistency than we have with the lead ball, we got to pack it down a couple of times. Normally when you would get to this point, you would only have to pack your lead ball down one time, but you still had to pack it down in each cylinder. But since we're just loading up the one shot, saves us just that little bit of time. Now I'm going to pack this in 3 times, so it's going to be nice and loud for you guys. Again, you would only have to do this once with a lead ball. On this side over here so that you guys can see the way we're going to be loading this up. Now these caps, since they're a little bit more modern, they're made for a little bit different stuff. We give them a little bit of a pinch just to get that metal just a little bit bent so it'll sit on just a little bit better. And we go through and we set it right on the back of that nipple. Now you guys can all see how that's sitting right on the top there, just that little bit of copper that's back there. It sits right on there. So then we go through and we bring our cylinder around and we push it down in place to make sure everything's nice and seated. And after all of that work, we're finally ready to fire off one shot. Now this is the point where this is going to be just a little bit loud. If any of you have a little bit sensitive hearing, or even for your dogs, just so you guys know, this is going to be a little bit loud. So now's the point where if you want, you might want to cover your ears. Fire in the hole! Not too terrible, right? With the 10 grains of powder, it's a little bit less than what you would find with something like 15 to 20 grains. But like I said, I want to make sure that you guys can hear the rest of the day. And so like I said, a lot of time goes into loading and firing these guns. But this is a 45 long Colt. This is one of the very popular calibers back in the 1800s. And then one of the most famous and easily recognizable pistols of all time that was chambered in this 45 long Colt. Single action army. The Colt Peacemaker. Like I said, probably one of the most recognizable revolvers in history. This right here is the favorite gun of John Wayne. This was his personal favorite gun that he would like to carry around, and it's what he liked to have for some of his movies. Now you guys saw what an extensive process it was to load up the black powder. To load this guy, what you have to do is, again, you got to bring this halfway back so your cylinder will rotate. You flip open this little gate right here, and you're loading. A lot easier loading up this than loading up black powder, so you guys can really see how this little invention really changed the course of history. Now, I talked about the pistols, I'm going to talk a little bit about rifles, and we're going to jump back to 1861. Now, this rifle was the favorite and the most common gun that you would see in the hands of regular infantrymen with the Union Army during the Civil War. This is an 1861 Springfield rifled musket. Big, old, heavy gun. You guys can see, this gun is taller than both of you guys are here. Yeah, nice big gun here. But why was this gun the favorite of the Union Army? Number one, it was cheap to make. Government's always got to be worrying about how they're spending their money, right? Even nowadays. So if it's cheap to make, even better. But you could even take the most uneducated farm boy, and you could teach him how to use this gun. And you had to be able to teach a lot of people. How old are you, young man? 14? You'd have to learn how to use this gun. You know, we saw people in the Civil War as young as 12, 13, 14, ready to go fight for what they believed in back in those days. Some of you guys like that. How many of you have seen the movie Quigley Down Under? You guys have seen that before? Well, if you've seen that, then you sure to recognize the legendary Sharps. That's what Quigley Down Under, this was the gun they used. Of course, his was a little bit different than this model. Now, this is a carbine. What that means is this is a little bit shorter than the full-length rifle version. This is something that you would see in the hands of the cavalry. Those are the people who would be carrying around these carbines. But the reason why this gun was so much better than the Springfield rifle musket was the action. Now this had a falling block. What that meant is you bring this back and you'll all notice that this lever comes out right here. Y'all can see that? And when you drop that lever, your action inside falls down. That's the falling block that I'm telling you about. So you go through and you still had to load this with a paper bullet and a percussion cap. But instead of having to load everything down the barrel and push it down, you simply bring this to half cock, drop your lever, and you can load everything at the back of your barrel instead of the front. This was better, but it still wasn't great. They decided we can do better. And it was right about that 1873, they said, you know, that self-contained bullet, that's what we need, that metallic cartridge. And you started seeing stuff like this guy pop up. Now this is another carbine. This is a Springfield trapdoor, 1873 Springfield trapdoor. This was one of those guns that fired a bullet as opposed to a paper cartridge. Now the reason it's called a trapdoor refers to the action. You bring this hammer to half cock, and then this flips up right here. That's your trapdoor action. You go through and it would flip up, and you can load your bullet right inside there. This increased your rate of fire dramatically. You could go through and you could, if you knew what you were doing, you could put shells in here and start slinging lead down range as fast as you can. Now, like I said, if you guys are fans of those cowboy movies, these aren't the type. Yeah, do you got a question, buddy?
I like cowboy.
See, then you're in the right place right here. But you notice in a lot of those movies, these aren't really the rifles that you're seeing. What do you see in those movies? Good old lever action rifle, right? Now this is an 1873 Winchester. a little bit more familiar to fans of the modern, a little bit more of those cowboy movies. Now this was a revolution in firearms. Reason for that is they said this was the gun that you could load on Sunday, shoot it all week, and you'd still have ammo on Sunday. Depending on what model of lever action you had, you could load it with anywhere from 8, 10, 12 to 14 rounds in these guys. And if you knew what you were doing, it was very easy to put this up to your shoulder. And as fast as you can work that action, that's as fast as you can fire. Good old double barrel shotgun. Now this gun has a million different purposes with it. This is a coach gun, so it's a little bit shorter. You can see it's not very long. The reason for that was this was primarily used on horseback, stagecoaches, and wagons. The reason it's got the shorter barrel is your shot expands out quicker. So it goes through, if you have someone riding up next to you on a horse and you don't want them to be there, this is the gun that you can just point out and you can get a lot of ground covered at that nice short distance. But you would see these guns. I have one at home that stands this tall on it. So very long that you can find with some of these guns. Now why do I say this is the great equalizer that everyone can use? It's just stupid simple. All you have to do to use this gun is flip this lever over so your barrel will open. Drop in your shells, close it, and pull your hammers back. Then you're ready to fire off. Very, very easy to use this gun, and it had a lot of different purposes. You could use this gun if you wanted to go out hunting big game. They did have slugs that they would fire out a single heavy projectile, so you could take down the nice big animal. If you wanted to go bird hunting, you could use that shot expanded out. This was the gun you used. If you needed to defend your home, this was the gun you used. If you broke this gun in half over somebody's back, you didn't have to worry because these guns were fairly cheap. So you could go through, and this was something that you could access to this gun very, very easily. And if you knew what you were doing, again, this is something that was really a great thing to have. And they saw with a lot of people, this was the gun that they would have with them. Now that is all of the guns that I have to show you, but I do have one extra little treat while we're talking about some of the weaponry. And we'll go back to the cavalry with the Civil War. Something that you would see very popular with officers during the Civil War. Nice big saber that you carry around. Isn't that just a beautiful, beautiful piece right there? Now, practicality with this, you probably wouldn't see a lot of use with this on the battlefield. If you were leading your men on a charge and you had a line of guys pointing those rifled muskets at you, yeah, you're probably not just going to go running at them with a sword. But if this was your last option, this was a good option to have because you can get a lot of reach out there. And the original design, you can see how it's got that curve to the blade here. One of the original ideas with these swords was so that it had a nice swing to it so you could take someone off of a horse. And that was one of the purposes with these guys. Now again, practicality, you didn't see a lot of real use out of them, but you still see these even today with modern military. You'll see in full dress uniform, some people still carry stuff like this. Guns, if you want me to take any out, have any questions, anything like that, feel free to let me know and we'll see what we can do for you.